So this is issue 33 part 2, and what we're going to do is we're going to paint this guy who is the Knight Judicator. Now what we're going to do is we're going to paint all of them, just the colours that we've got so far, and we're going to need 10, which I'll go through. We're not going to paint this bit. This is going to come in part 2 along with the 2 Griffhounds. So the paints that we're going to need for this particular stage is our Retributor armour, and I'm explaining all of these now so I don't need to show you as I go. Abaddon black, we're going to need Corax white, we're going to need Cantor blue, so I've got too much on the desk there. Really excited about this one. Barak Nar Burgundy, Catachan Flesh, is that the right cut name? We are going to need Wraithbone and Lead Belcher and Corn Red, and finally we're going to need a wash of Agrax Earthshade. Now I want to make a little side note here. Independently, I wondered about the quality of these paints, and I put it down to the conclusion that maybe these aren't the paints that you'll buy in the shops. Yeah, they've cut the quality a little bit because we're getting things a little bit cheaper by doing it through the magazine. I have now seen various videos where they are suggesting that the quality has gone down, and I think this is all old stock perhaps. If you look at the way that that's separated, and that is quite blotchy on there, and there's a couple of them, especially the light colours, this Corax white, these haven't been used in like 2 or 3 days, so it's not a major problem because all you need to do is give it a really good shake, and there you see that it's starting to go back to normal. So what my suggestion is, we shake these like they're brand new every time we use them. If you're a little bit lucky like me and you've got a Vortex paint shaker, even better. And what I do is I give it about 10 seconds on that side, and then I give it 10 seconds upside down, and sometimes I'll pop it on its side, and then what you will find is you do have a perfectly usable paint. There we go, that looks beautiful inside. But obviously I'm doing this with the paint supplied. These are not my preferred paints anymore. Absolutely fantastic for the beginner. As the series pans out, you will see, like for example this Corn Red, what they will do is they should then give you a layer coat to bring a highlight up and then an edge highlight. But obviously we can only go with what we've got. Now I'm going to apply a little bit of experience that we should have picked up as we went. Can you see what I see about that model with regards to painting? Okay, I'll give you a second. So if you're like me, what you've noticed is, let me just get a brush, any brush. So how easy is it going to be for us to get into there? And look at that cloak under there. That's going to be really difficult. So we're going to start to work in sub-assemblies. This is a really easy one to do on a sub-assembly because it's a push fit. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove his arrows and quiver, which is not coming off very easy because it's such a good push fit connection. I will get this off. Do you know what, I did a practice run before and it just came off so easily. You know that as soon as you put a camera on, there we go, that's come off. And then what we're also going to do is take his cloak off, and then that will expose unpainted areas, which is fine. That just tells us where we need to apply the paint. So can you see now that that is going to be so much easier to paint? There'll still be awkward bits and we can break this down as much as we want, but painting the model and painting the cloak is going to be so much easier. The only thing we need to remember is when we paint, like for example the armour, we need to paint that shoulder pad as well, but I think you'll find that's going to be so much easier to paint. Right, so the format I'm going to do for the video is I'm just going to paint them using the normal method, which is pop a little bit of paint on the palette. We'll apply a little bit of water. I'll use a brush that I think is quite appropriate, and then I'll read out the instructions, and then I'll tell you some notes that I've made as I'm painting, but I'll speed the actual video footage to match the audio. Okay, so one other thing that I did forget to mention, this is quite bad, this Retributor armour. I'm just going to apply the first coat on camera. I'll do the second coat off camera, and then I'll show you the finished result once we get into it. So, stage 1 says undercoat the Knight Judicator apart from the chunk of rubble with 3 thin coats of Retributor armour. Now, I'm actually not going to do the whole model. I cannot see the point. The only bit that's going to be gold is the actual arrow, bow, and the armour. So I can't see the point in doing all of the cloak and everything else, and that's going on quite nicely with 1 coat, but I will give it 2. And this is what he looks like once he's done. That's 2 coats. Now, I did miss a little bit out on the chainmail. I didn't panic too much about that, because I believe that will be silver once we finish. Yeah, it will be silver, so I'm really not panicking, but I've got 2 good coats on that. We have needed 1 less coat because we've already primed it, but if you were painting that straight onto bare metal, then obviously you'd probably need another coat, and that first coat would look quite daunting. So next up is Abaddon Black, and it says once the undercoats have finished, use the tip of your starter brush to base coat the leather undersuits with Abaddon Black. So this is the point we have to start being careful, because we don't want to paint over the gold parts. If we paint over any other parts, that's not a problem because they will get tidied up. But make sure you've got a good brush with a good tip, and just carefully paint what you think is the undersuit. Basically any lower any recessed details in the armour. Okay, so while we've got the black out, I'm just going to skip to stage 6, which is base coat the inner part of the quiver of the arrows, avoiding the metal fittings and arrows themselves. So, okay, so next up we want the Corax white, and carefully apply 3 thin base coats to the inner lining of the knight's cape. So that's going to be nice and simple. Oh, that's quite good coverage actually. So before we go on to the Cantor Blue, I'm actually going to be using 2 brushes, but I just want you to have a look at this cloak. Now, because it's such a light colour, it's quite off-putting when you put the white on. You'll put the first coat on, as expected, it'll be really awful. Then you'll put the second coat on. Now in my case, it went on, it looked really nice. It was either the second or third coat, it looked really nice, but then once it dried, it started to go patchy again. That is the nature of the light colours. You just need to persevere with it, keep applying coats. In this case, I put 4 coats on. As you can see, it's a really nice layer. So let's get on with the blue. So for the blue, we have got to apply a base coat to the shoulder pads, which is actually all on the same piece. Now I'm going to do that with probably going to do it with a smaller brush. We also want to do the cloak, and because I've done the cloak, because I've taken the cloak off, we need to remember that part of the cloak is still on the main figure. So to sort of expand on what I said about the white, this is one coat of blue. Now I did probably over thin it a little bit, but it does show how wishy-washy it is. And I'll show you what it looks like when the second coat is done. Okay, so this is two coats that have dried. Don't like the focus. Now you see it's a little bit patchy. You could probably stop there. By the time you add a wash to it, you could it'd probably be absolutely fine. But as you can see, I'm about to just put a third coat on, and I'll show you this coat wet. I think this is going to be it. I think that is the magic number this time, but we'll see what happens when it dries. Okay, so that is the cloak after 3 coats. And next we're going to move on to the Barnock Burgundy, and for this we just need to do the bow. So I've actually completely missed the mark there and gone over the fingers with the burgundy. If you go over any colour that's already been painted, that's not a problem. We just go back over. Obviously if the colour hasn't been painted yet, we'll leave it and we'll wait till we get to that colour, which is why it's quite important to pick the colours carefully. What I would actually prefer to have done on this one is quite possibly painted the burgundy first, but that's fixed in just a couple of brush strokes. Stage 8 and 9, paint the Knight Judicator's belt with the small straps on his gauntlets and boots with 2 thin coats of Catagon flesh, and then next carefully paint the shafts of the arrows in the quiver with Catachan flesh, as well as the limbs of the model bow. And I have taken the arrow assembly down a little bit. Okay, stages 10, 11 and 12. Give your brush a good clean, which I think you should be doing between every colour anyway. Then base coat the string of the bow with 2 thin coats of wraithbone. And then on to 11. If you choose the masthead for your Knight Judicator, which I have, carefully base coat the back of the head with wraithbone. And then stage 12. Base coat the hanging scroll attached to the Knight Judicator's quiver with 2 thin coats of wraithbone. So stage 13, Leadbelcher. Use the tip of your brush to base coat the head of the arrows, including those found in the Knight Judicator's quiver. Stage 14, base coat the mail skirt worn by the Knight Judicator. Wash your brush frequently as you work to prevent it clogging. And then stage 15, base coat the small fittings on the bowstring with Leadbelcher. Hold the model like this as you work to keep it stable. Stage 16, carefully base coat the emblem on the shoulder with Corax white. And then stage 17, next base coat the small lightning bolts seen here with Corax white. Stage 18, turn the model upside down to base coat the helmet plume with Mephiston red. Okay, and final stage, once the helmet plume has dried, shade it with Agrax Earthshade. Now do be careful with this Agrax Earthshade. It may well try to pool, and that's something you want to avoid. And if it does pool, just dry your brush off and just wick it out. So there we go, he is finished. I have reassembled him. Haven't touched the base yet because that's coming next week with the Griffhounds. And I'm quite happy with the cloak. You can see the blue cloak. It's a little bit scruffy, it needs a bit of a touch up actually. And then when you flip it over, it's blue. Some of the bits do look a bit scruffy like this, and that's because this is only the base coats. As we progress further in the magazine and we start getting layers, and highlights, then obviously these will get a little touched up. But to be honest with you, as a base coated only model, I think that's pretty good, and I don't think we can complain. The only bit of shade is on the plume, and as you can see, it's done absolute wonders for that. Maybe a little bit heavy underneath, maybe not, you be the judge. But yeah, so obviously this shade needs to go over it in the highlights, but I'm pretty happy with that. So guys, see you in the next episode, which is next week. Sorry, I've got hiccups. So next week will be the Griffhounds and the Rubble. So what I'll do is I'll take him off the base. I'll need to take there's a connection point at the bottom of the bow there. I'll pull the whole thing out, take the bow off, split the rubble in two, which will separate him, and then I'll put the rubble back on the base, and that will save any issues with getting over the foot. One other thing, it said something about brown boots, but it didn't show any pictures, so I don't know if I've got a bit of artistic license there, but I've just done the back of the foot brown, and I think that looks quite nice. It just splits things up a little bit. Right guys, so I'll see you next week when we'll be doing 2 Griffhounds and some rubble.